What is the most reliable BMW M3 ever made? If you believe everything that you read on the forums, every S65 has thrown a rod through the block, every 911 probably leaks oil and has intermediate shaft failure, and every single GTR known to mankind is on its 5th transmission and it has never been replaced under warranty. Now, most enthusiasts know that the internet has made these issues become blown way out of proportion. With all that said, I'm not saying that BMWs are completely bulletproof. In fact, the regular 3 Series has quite a few issues, such as like control arm bushings that like to fail, window regulators that don't like to work, and shock mounts that like to crack. But with this video here, I want to outline M3 specific issues for each generation and kind of give you an idea of what you should look out for if you're in the market for one. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to let you know which generation of M3 I believe is the most reliable. Now, I've owned 7 M3s and driven every single generation, so I think that it goes without saying that they are one of the best sports cars ever made. At least I think so. So let's start out with God's Chariot. Hot rods came in all shapes and sizes back in the 80s, and the go-fast bodywork, the revvy 4-cylinder engine, and the tight suspension were a recipe that would satisfy the most ambitious of boy racers. The E30 M3, which was offered in the US from 1988 to 1991, has quickly become one of the most popular new-timer classic cars in the world. BMW was interested in building one of the best driver cars in the world, and guess what? It succeeded. Now, there are a few things that you want to look out for if you're going to buy an E30 M3. The 2.3 liter 4-cylinder power plant can be very finicky and temperamental. Valve adjustments are nothing new to the M3 motors, and the factory specs of 30,000 mile intervals must be followed on these engines. So you need to check and make sure that these adjustments were done regularly, as well as make sure that the timing chain noise isn't excessive. Also, cars that either look like they've been tracked or just ridden hard and put away wet can suffer from the infamous rod bearing wear. They also can have cracked subframes and other wear and tear on the actual body. Rust is also known to show up in locations like the windshield, above the license plate, and under the rear rockers. Now, the first generation M3 is a balanced, forgiving sports car that's a world-class canyon carver. Let's move on to its successor. Now, the second generation had a much quieter exterior, more comfortable cockpit, and was built to grow the M3 model and the M division as a whole. They were built from 1995 through 1999 with the 3 liter or the 3.2 liter, which offered 240 horsepower, upgraded brakes and suspension when you compared it to just a normal 3 Series. The crazy thing is that there were over 36,000 US spec examples sold within the US, with a ton of different colors and option packages to choose from. In fact, last year, I picked up a 1 of 5 spec'd car, an Estoril blue over Modena convertible with a 5-speed. It was an incredible car, and the drive up the West Coast was absolutely unbelievable. Feel free to check out that video right here. Now, this generation of M3 is rather bulletproof, with 3 of the main issues being: number 1 is the cooling system, which needs to be replaced with a water pump with a metal impeller, an aluminum thermostat housing, and an all aluminum radiator. If that's done, you've gotten rid of all the major failure points. Otherwise, the cooling system will fail you and you're gonna be left stranded on the side of the road. 2, some cars have weak front strut towers and rear shock mounts. Check to see if they've been reinforced, and if they haven't, you gotta do it right away. I learned the hard way. 3rd is the head gasket has been known to fail between 100 and 150,000 miles. And if your differential is loud, there's a chance that it will fail because the US spec diff is much smaller than the European one. Other than that, just make sure that the car has not been tinkered with and it's in good shape. A lot of these cars, the S50 and S52s, have been either turbocharged or supercharged or just heavily modified because it's such a great platform to start with for either street use and the track. So just make sure you're getting kind of an unmolested example. Alrighty, let's move on to the 3rd gen. Built from 2001 to 2006, the M3 sports a 333 horsepower motor, a 6-speed or the optional SMG transmission, exterior enhancements that paid homage to the E30 M3, and something that most people don't know is that the fender vents were actually meant to recall those on the 3-liter CSL of the 70s. All in all, the E46 M3 is probably one of the best performance bargains of this decade. Now, early cars did suffer from the well-known, according to the internet, rod bearing issue. And if they have been dealt with, it would have been done through a factory recall. So if you're looking at an E46, call the dealer with the VIN and see if the recall has been done. Also, the SMG gearboxes often have a hydraulic pump issue. Valve adjustments, again, were required every 30,000 miles, just like the E30 M3, so make sure those were done on schedule. And lastly is the well-known rear subframe will crack at some point on every single E46 M3. So it's either been done or it needs to be done. The reason is the entire rear axle is mounted on one very, very thin panel. So driving it like an M car is going to cause these stress fractures. Overall, the E46 M3 is a stout package, combining some of the best qualities of the two M3s that came before it. And it's one hell of a bargain. Now, let's move on to the generation that shoehorned a V8 under the hood. The E90, E92, and E93 chassis was the first and most likely last BMW M3 that ever sported a thundering 414 horsepower V8. With all that power mated to either the 6-speed or 7-speed dual clutch transmission, stiff chassis, and nearly 50-50 weight distribution, it's a recipe every enthusiast should taste. Now, ever since BMW announced that they would be building this car, I knew I had to get my hands on one. Last year, I bought, fixed, drove the piss out of, and sold one of my personal ideal cars, an E90 M3, because 4 doors are better. Now, I was able to use the ideal car strategies on this specific car, and feel free to click above and watch me make money on my dream car. As you'll see in that video, there are some things that will fail on the E90, E92, and E93 M3. Just like the E46 rod bearing issues, the S65 had the same issue. So either send in samples to Blackstone Labs and get an analysis on how good your engine is, or you can sleep a little easier at night, just get the rod bearings done. Also, the TCAs, throttle control actuators, will fail. Now, they're not extremely difficult to replace, as you'll see in the video, but taking it to a dealer can be. And because it's a newer car, things like brakes, tires, and other wear and tear items can be pretty costly. So just make sure that the one you're checking out is pretty sorted. But with all that said, it is an absolute excellent package, and there's something just so cool about having a V8 in an M3. All right, so I've gone through the 4 different generations of the M3. Now, I'm not going to cover the F80 or F82 because they're still relatively new and mostly under warranty. So after having seat time, living with, and most importantly, enjoying all 4 generation M3s, I would say that the most reliable generation is the E36 M3. Even with 6-figure miles and some old age, these motorsport cars can reliably cut through corners and give a driver a sense of satisfaction, whether you're going to the grocery store or coming home from the track day. You could have ordered it in almost any color combination, and it came in coupe, convertible, and my absolute favorite, the sedan. Hashtag M345. And when things do go wrong, because they will, parts are relatively inexpensive and repairs are straightforward enough that any self-sufficient DIYer should be able to tackle the repair. And if you can't and you have to take it to a shop, well, the engineering is relatively basic compared to the new high-tech cars, so your bill should be less than a lease payment on a brand new M3. So yeah, out of all the M3s that I've owned, the E36 M3 has hands down been the least expensive to keep on the road. And that's a good thing, because this classic Bimmer is all about smiles per gallon, and it will reliably keep those smiles coming. I mean, mile after mile after mile. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this vid. Smash the like button, and also if you're new here, please subscribe to Ideal Cars. Let me know in the comments which generation M3 is your favorite, and if you've owned one, what reliability issues have you run into? I just recently reviewed and scored an E30 M3, and if you want to check out that vid, click over here. And if you want to see what YouTube suggests, click over here. But either way, you can't lose, and as always, keep living that ideal lifestyle.